This morning, we have Pastor John from Orange preaching this morning. And yes, amen. We're going to give him a clap offering in 1 second. I'm going to clap with you. A special place in my heart. I've said this before. Someone may say, Pastor, you said the same thing last time. Well, I'll say the same thing next time because I never want to forget those who believed in me. You never want to forget the people that helped you along the way and keep you in the race. When I started as an evangelist about 400 years ago, my first pet was a dinosaur. Okay, there's the joke. Okay, but I started many years ago. Pastor John had me preach revivals for him occasionally. I don't know how many I did, maybe one or two. But when you're young starting out, you just need someone to believe in you. And, I really didn't know anybody. He had me preach, then he had me come back. He was such an encouragement to my life. It kind of kept me like, I guess I can do this. He says, I can do this. I can do this. And he said, no, I think you do a good job. Sometimes we need to hear someone say, I believe in you. And him saying, I believe in you is what, it really helped me as a young evangelist. It really did. And I said, I never want to forget this. And then our brother got really, really sick. He's one of these pastors that got really, really sick from the COVID. But the blessing on his side, he almost died. He really did. But he made it out of it by the grace of God. Other pastors, we have a young pastor in L.A., you remember, half his age. He got COVID and he died. Artie's assistant pastor, young man. I say young, he's 40-something, but he got COVID and died. Our brother's a little older. He got COVID, very sick. And so I say that because he's the guy we were praying for. He put a face to the name. Every service, literally every service, the time he was into the hospital, we pray for every single service for Pastor John. If we didn't remember, most of the time we remember we prayed for him. And his wife said it, other people who know him said it, it's a miracle that he's even with us. Not just with us, he's functioning. He's pastoring, he preaches. He preached this morning. And so he has a special place in my heart. I want all of us just to open our hearts. Let God use him and speak to us. Because he almost died, maybe he shared a little bit about the COVID, what he experienced. Some people have done that. That would be kind of interesting, actually, before he preaches. If you wanted to see that, Pastor John, about the importance of life. You never know. Things can change like that. But I thank God he's alive, and I thank you all for praying for him. Let's give him a warm welcome as he comes.
Appreciate the opportunity to be with you again, even though it's been years. But I appreciate Pastor Cary, his friendship, his wife, just their faithfulness and everything that God has been able to do through their lives. Pastor Cary's he's a very great friend and tremendous preacher. I appreciate him. And he's been an inspiration for me as well. If you have your Bible, 2 Timothy chapter 4. 2 Timothy chapter 4. I want to minister a message entitled Honored Service out of 2 Timothy chapter 4. There were a couple of men that went to see Gettysburg. They'd never been there. One of them he had, the other one hadn't. So they're wanting to get a tour specific by one individual. So the story goes as this one is trying to get the certain tour guide to get them going. He says, I'll warn you, he's really rough around the edges, gruff with strong opinions. He's had a hard life, the visitor said, but he's special, you'll see. And he's wanted a tour of Gettysburg his whole life. I told him I knew just the person to show it to him. My visitor pressed me again. I'd already done many tours that day. But something in my visitor's eyes convinced me to take him and his friend on a tour. Great, he exclaimed. I'll take you to the truck. He walked me to the parking lot where I met Medal of Honor recipient David Dolby, a big burly fellow with a bushy gray beard. He smiled as he struggled out of the pickup truck with his cane. His clothes had seen better days, and his swollen, bruised feet were clad in flip-flops. But his sky blue eyes twinkled, and from his neck hung the Medal of Honor, suspended from a ribbon with its field of blue and white stars, absolutely spotless. I knew that decoration immediately because the Medal of Honor is a specialty of mine. It's the highest military decoration a soldier can receive in the United States. Most of us know it as the Award for Bravery, above and beyond. Of the millions who have gone to war under our flag, fewer than 3,500 have received it. Dobie, who was awarded the medal for his actions in Vietnam, was the first recipient I'd ever met, the privilege of a lifetime. 2 Timothy chapter 4, beginning in verse number 1. I charge thee therefore before God and the Lord Jesus Christ, who shall judge the quick and the dead at his appearing in his kingdom. Preach the word, be instant in season, out of season, reprove, rebuke, exhort, with all long suffering and doctrine. For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but after their own lust shall they heap to themselves teachers, having itching ears. And they shall turn away their ears from the truth, and shall be turned into fables. But watch thou in all things, endure affliction, do the work of an evangelist, make full proof of thy ministry. For I am now ready to be offered, and the time of my departure is at hand. I have fought a good fight, I have finished my course, I have kept the faith. Henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, shall give me at that day, and not to me only, but unto all them also that love his appearing. I want to talk to you for a moment about being pulled in many directions. And this is something that each one of us experience from morning till night. We're constantly being stretched from one thing to another. And it's not only our children that have a hard time getting up in the morning. And the older you get, it doesn't get any easier. And so the demands upon our life, they're very just pressing. And it doesn't matter who you are. Life demands things from us. And the thing about it is that they will always be there. Life's demands will always be there. It doesn't matter, how much we try to get ahead in life or how much we've got things on the ball. We go to bed, we sleep. The moment we wake up in the morning, the demands are waiting for us. And it's, pulling us in one direction or another. There are seasons, there are times in life where you might feel like you're like a hamster in a cage. You're just doing this and doing that and constantly in motion. You're here and then you're there, and it's like this never-ending cycle of momentum and constantly exerting oneself. And it's like you're that hamster just moving, but really not getting anywhere. And it's in this life that you and I can come to the conclusion that, there's not a whole lot of appreciation for what we do. It's like sometimes our children don't appreciate us as their parents and the sacrifices that we have made. Other times it's family members when we go out of our way to do the best that we can, to be an example to them, to reach for them, to help them, even though we have pressures on our own personal lives. And it doesn't seem like there's that reciprocation of appreciation. And we go to work and we're faithful and we give of ourselves at our jobs, and it doesn't seem like our employer really does appreciate, or even our coworkers appreciate that they can count on us. And life just demands and demands and demands from us just things, and it doesn't seem like we get anything from life or from what we're involved in. And the reality is that everyone, even those we don't know, people that are on the streets that we drive the streets with, that they're going through the exact same problems that we are. And time's not on our side. And the common thought, even we say it, I don't have enough time. And most people are in a hurry. You see them all the time. They're in a hurry to go to lunch, they're in a hurry to get to work, hurry to get home, and constantly just pressured, to perform and pressured to do the right thing from everyone around us. We're up for work early. Those of you that are still in school, you study hard and give yourself racing down these streets and freeways trying to get to where you're going. And we've only got a certain amount of time. That's all we have. And every one of us gets up in the morning and we have just till the end of the day. We don't have any extra time. And we come home in a rush, and you ladies, God bless you, you come home from work and you got to, make dinner and get the kids ready after dinner, bathe them and get them ready for school, all these different things that still are on your plate. And hopefully you're married to a good husband and he's helping you right along. But again, it just doesn't seem to be enough time. Not enough time to sleep, and life slips away. Like the grains of sand in an hourglass. It's just slipping away without us even noticing it. We don't even hear the ticking of the clock. And so perhaps some of this may have been weighing the Apostle Paul's mind as he's writing from a prison cell. And they say that he's in his 60s at this some juncture in his life. He's not going to make it out. He's going to be executed. This is the second time that he's in prison. They say that he was converted at the age of 29, somewhere in that age. And so now years have gone by, and he's at the end. And that's how life is. It seems to just slip through our fingers. Every one of us sitting here that's old, like Pastor Cary and myself, can remember when we were young and full of energy. We could light the candle on both ends and we had no problem, We just had to all just get up and go. That is gone. And the Apostle Paul is at the end of life. Perhaps he's thinking about all that's taken place. And he's writing concerning time running out on people to accept the gospel. That's what weighs heavily upon him. So let's look at living faithful to the end. Because if you're going to be as the Apostle Paul's, we're going to be faithful to the end, then it just simply, one element is making up our minds that that's what we're going to do. And that we have decided to follow Jesus, and nothing is going to stop us from doing that. The story about this man who was the Medal of Honor that was on that tour of Gettysburg. The story goes on, it says, as we wound our way through sites like the Peach Orchard and Pickett's Charge, his attitude changed. Talking about the Medal of Honor winner, his attitude changed. He couldn't contain his admiration for the soldiers and the sacrifices they made to defend their ideals. At our stop in the wheat field, a bloody cauldron nicknamed the Whirlpool of Death by the soldiers who fought there, he tearfully said, "Good God, those boys were one of a kind." In Hebrews in chapter 11, the chapter of our heroes, at verses 35 through 38, describes the Christians of that day, people that were tortured, people that were mocked, had their backs laid open by whippings. They had been placed in prison. They had been killed, stoned, sawed in half, killed by sword. Goes on to say that they walked around destitute, in extreme poverty, oppressed, and mistreated. And so, no matter what took place in their lives, these are individuals that are not named, but they lived their life of sacrifice. There wasn't seemingly any kind of appreciation coming from anyone around them, aside from their brethren that labored in the trenches with them. Yet they continued on. They made a decision. I'm giving my life to Jesus. I'm going to serve God. I'm going to follow him. And nothing would stop them. These men that died at Gettysburg were of the same persuasion. They had their own reasons for being in the war, but they gave their lives. They sacrificed themselves, something beyond their own lives. They were semper fidelis to the end, forever faithful. You know, Jesus never said to anyone that if we followed him, it was going to be easy. In Matthew chapter 10, verse 38, in one translation, it says, if you don't go all the way with me, through thick and thin, you don't deserve me. Those are very strong words to say. But the understanding is very clear, whether those are the exact words that Jesus said or not. The intent or the idea was there, you know, that this is something worth giving yourself to. There are times where, you know, we don't feel like going on. That's the reality. There's times that we don't feel like pressing on. And when you get older, it's the same thing. You've sacrificed, you've given yourself, you've been on outreaches, whether it's local or going out of town to help another church. You're faithful to church. You give of yourself and your resources and your energy, and it just seems like because there doesn't seem to be any real appreciation, that's for nothing. And there are seasons and times where people do really feel like just simply, you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore. It's a thankless job, so to speak. Matthew 11:28, Jesus understands that what he was calling people to, it's not easy. It's not easy at all. And he says the words to these that are listening to him as well as you and I. He says, come unto me, all of you that are heavy laden. I'll give you rest. That God knows that we struggle, and he knows that we are tired. He said, but if you'll come to me, I will give you rest. And I believe that a lot of times that's something that some Christians fail to do. That we try so hard, and we're doing this and we're doing that, and we neglect coming to him. And we don't really spend a whole lot of time with him because we're busy, right? Get up early in the morning, and, you know, if you get up really early, you know, to make time for prayer, that's tremendous. But some don't. And it's great, in the midst of coming home and getting things ready in the midweek service, you're here before service starts and you're able to pray. That's powerful. But not everyone does it, and not everyone is able to do that. Time presses on us and demands pull us in different directions, and God knows that, but the challenge is to come to him. Apostle Paul talks about enduring affliction, working as an evangelist. And so the Apostle Paul in 2 Corinthians 12:9, he's got an issue. And they're not sure exactly what it is. It could have been, some say it's some form of illness that he had, a thorn in his side. Others, with someone in the local congregation that was a pain in his side. We don't know. But he comes to God and he's asking God for deliverance. God, you need to help me with this situation. You need to do something for me. And God's response to him is, my grace is all you need. I'm not taking this from you. And how many times do we come to him and we're saying, God, take this from me. Help me out of this situation. And some of us, we wrestle with issues in life for months, some even years. Constantly, the same thing, just like we're running in circles. I said, God, help me. God, why won't you just lift this burden off of my back? Lord, why don't you just move? I've asked you so many times. And what God is saying is, my grace is sufficient for you. I'm not going to do that. I don't know about you, but that bothers me. Just being honest. And it brought me to 2 Kings chapter 7. And we know the story, that the city is being besieged by the Syrians. They've cut them off. There's no food, no refreshment, nothing's coming in. And they're starving. They're killing their babies or eating, turning to cannibalism, and just, it's bad. And there are 4 lepers, right, outside of the city gate. They're dying. People in the city are dying. And, they're kind of talking to themselves. They say, why we sit here and die? If we go in there, we're going to die with them. If we stay out here, we're going to die. Let's just go and check and see what happens with the Assyrians. If they kill us, okay, we're dying anyway. And so they do, and the story that they go there, and the Syrians hear the footprints of a huge army, and they leave, and these 4 leprous men walk into the camp, and there's all kinds of food, there's all kinds of resources, and they're having a great time. But they remember the people in the city. And so they go back and they tell the city about what's going on, and an entire city is saved because of 4 dying men. But I thought to myself, God, why didn't you heal them? I don't know if that ever crossed your mind. A great, powerful story. But I'm thinking, why didn't you just heal them, God? Why didn't you touch them and say, because you were faithful, because you did what your heart was telling you to do, I was moving you to have compassion on those people. Because you did that, you know what? I'm going to heal your bodies. You're going to be brand spanking new. He didn't do that. And I said, that doesn't quite seem fair, God. But I guess God would say, my grace is sufficient. He used 4 dying men to save an entire city. You know, we go through crisis like everyone else. But in the midst of our crisis, there are other people around us that are going through their crisis. And just like those 4 leprous men, God looks to you and I to speak and to tell others about the goodness of God, what you and I have encountered with God, even though we're in the midst of our own situation and crisis. I talked to you about the welcoming of a triumphant church. Because Paul talks about a crown of righteousness. It's a recognition of achievement. And Paul has come to understand he's not going to get that here on earth. But he'll get it when he steps into eternity. Verse 8, the word crown, Stephanos, means a badge of royalty, a prize in the public games, a symbol of honor. That's where the reward is for each and every one of us. Not here. And thank God when God does move in our situations and he does bless us and he does help. But there's a crown that awaits every single one of us in heaven, that God himself will place upon us. Not only that, this morning, but in Hebrews 12:1 talks about a crowd of people, those that have gone before us, that are going to be there, and they're going to see the crowning of our lives. The pioneers who blazed through life before us. You know, listening to Pastor Mejia and the offering, and that this church is here because of you, and that is absolutely true. But I think also of those that came before us. I think of those that were faithful. Those that were here when the church first opened up. I think about the church in Orange and the pastor that went there to pioneer the church back in 1987. And the small group of people that he was able to gather together to love God, to give their lives, and to pay the price, to lay a foundation from which others would come. Where the gospel would reach others, even though they were not there anymore. And that's what this man in our story, this Medal of Honor, he's looking at Gettysburg. And he's getting a picture of men that laid their lives down so this country could survive. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 4. Peter describes this crown of glory that fades not away. The story about this Medal of Honor recipient, it says, it was May 1966 near Ahiki, and Specialist 4th Class Dolby was serving his first tour of duty when his platoon walked into an ambush. In a flash, the enemy killed 6 and wounded several others, including his platoon commander. In the 4-hour battle, Dolby took command, carried comrades to safety under fire, assaulted enemy machine bunkers until he ran out of ammo, and marked every position so that airstrikes could stop the attack once and for all. One of his wounded, who was quoted saying in Dobie's obituary, said that Dobie was the bravest man I ever knew, maybe the bravest man that ever lived. He saved all of us. Dobie volunteered for 4 more tours of duty after that battle, which earned him the Medal of Honor. He also received more accolades: the Silver Star, the Bronze Star, and the Purple Heart. He simply took charge as others were killed, and he assumed leadership in a crisis. The story goes on. It says, during our tour together, he spoke of the terrors or the horrors of Vietnam and brushed off his service and heroism. After the war, his fortune sank. He fell on hard times. So when I suggested that he too had fought bravely, he shook his head, looking down. I'm just a normal person. I did what had to be done. But the ones who fought here, his voice broke. Then he composed himself and lifted his cane, gesturing across the wheat field. They're the brave ones. We walk in their shadows. He says, I'm just an ordinary man. I just did what I had to do. That's the story of every Christian in this room. We're just ordinary people. We're not high flyers. We're just doing what we're supposed to do. That's all. Working a job, raising our children, doing the best we can, being a Christian example to others, witnessing, reaching for people, giving of ourselves. And we're walking on the shadows of others that have gone before us. It says we piled back into the pickup and headed to Devil's Den. I pulled into a parking place and noticed a familiar face getting out of a van beside us. Brigadier General Harold Nilsson, a West Point graduate who had served in Vietnam too. He waved to me and smiled, so I introduced him to Dobie. As Dobie hobbled out and around the truck, I said, David, this is General Harold Nilsson. All the negative talk about his service melted away. Duty and affection for his country emerging in its place. For not only did Dobie immediately come to attention as straight as his broken body allowed, but the retired general, upon seeing the medal around Dobie's neck, assumed a ramrod straight posture as he saluted him, slowly, reverently. There were large groups of tourists around us, and they stopped, spellbound at the sight. One young man said to me, "What's going on? I heard you say the one guy's a general. Why did he salute that shabby guy first?" I told him that when members of the armed services see another wearing the Medal of Honor, it's their duty to salute him or her first, no matter their rank, to show their regard for the medal wearer's bravery and patriotism. See, the reality is that when you and I step across into eternity, that the people that are there already, they will stand. Because they know what you and I have been through. That we were faithful through thick and thin. Maybe nobody's sawing us in half. And we're not being tortured like some of them were. But the things that you and I have wrestled through in this age in which you and I live in, they'll know that we did our best, and they will receive us as heroes. Story concludes with, I'll never forget that day or that moment. Two modern American men, two modern American warriors, ranks apart and thousands of miles from their battlefields. Heroes in plain clothes standing on a long ago American battlefield. Bound by respect and love of country, which they both, in their time and in their place, gave their all for us. See, don't ever think that your life doesn't matter. That no one sees the sacrifices that you make. That no one cares. That's a lie. Because when you get to heaven and I get to heaven, that's when it's all going to make sense. And every tear that you and I have ever shed, and every time you and I just did what we were supposed to do, and say, you know what, it was worth it. And people will come and they will thank you for your faithfulness. They are. Because this church has treasure in other countries. From you, the word has gone out. And you may not have ever stepped foot in those countries, but there were men and women that left this church to go and pioneer. And they gave their lives and their churches that are there because of you. Because of you. Because you were faithful. Because you stayed by the stuff. You remained. And God and those in heaven will receive you and I up in honored service. Let's bow our heads. Heads are bowed, eyes closed. No one's looking around for just a few moments. I want to give an invitation this morning for salvation. You've come this morning and perhaps your heart's not right. If you've never given your life to Jesus, you don't know what you're missing. The lifting of the burden of life, the guilt of sin taken from us, experiencing a love while being forgiven. You just don't know if you've never experienced it. But you can. But you can. March 1st of 1981, I've stepped into a church building. And I don't remember the sermon that was preached, but I remember the altar call. By that time, I'd been married 9 years already. Had 3 kids. And I had been a horrible father and a horrible husband. And as the altar call was being given, the pastor began to say certain things. Like, you're here, you can start all over again. That's what I had been wanting to do for such a long time. I just never knew how. And other things that he mentioned that just resonated with what I had been thinking and what I had been wanting. Because I did want to be a good father. And I did want to be a good husband. And a good son. I just didn't know how. I came to an altar. And I gave my life to Jesus. And God began to change everything for the better. Heads are bowed, eyes are closed. That's what's being offered to you. An opportunity to change things in your life for the better. To become that man, that woman, that person that you really do long to be. Heads are bowed, eyes closed this morning. You'd like to give your life to Jesus. You'd like to rededicate your life maybe to him. All it takes is simply acknowledging your need by the raising of your hand, right up and right back down. You see, that's me. That's me. I want to give my life to Jesus. I'm not saved. I just come to church, or I just got invited. But I do have a need. And I do want to be changed and helped. Here's my hand. Quickly. Lift it right up and right back down. Remember me in a closing prayer. Pastor Zazueta. Here's my hand. Quickly. Very well. Changing the direction of the service and speaking to the saints of God in this place. Life is very demanding. And it pulls us in many directions. And there's people here, you've given it your all. And you give it your all. But it's like you don't really get anything back. There's no real great appreciation for what you do. I want to tell you something. There's days the Apostle Paul felt exactly the same way. One instance, he says, all of Asia has forsaken me. Demas left me, loving this present world. Men just walked away after he gave himself to them. But I want to tell you something. There's a great crowd in heaven that watches your life every day. And they cheer us on. We may not be able to hear the cheers, but they cheer us on. And only when you and I step into eternity are we going to really know the appreciation that people have for us. I'm going to open up this altar and just give people time just to come and just talk to God. He really does mean it. Come to me, all you that are heavy laden. I'll give you rest. He knows what it's like. And he wants to help us. Let's stand. The altar's open. We sing a song of